Hello there. Welcome to Aircraft Instrument Systems. Excuse me. I haven't done this in a while. This segment is going to be on airframe, and it's going to be under appendix requirement for airframes number 37, and it's entitled Instrument Markings. So bear with me a little bit. This is my own numbering system. Let's see. Here we go. Let me at least take a look at it here for a second. Not sure why that's selected. This first one's on markings. Many instruments contain colored markings on the dial face to indicate at a glance whether a particular system or component is within a range of operation that is safe and desirable, or if an undesirable condition exists. These markings are put on the instrument by the original equipment manufacturer in accordance with the aircraft specifications in the type certificate datasheet. Data describing these limitations can also be found in the aircraft manufacturer's operating and maintenance manuals. A question. Aircraft instruments should be marked and graduated in accordance with A, the instrument manufacturer's specifications, B, both the aircraft and engine manufacturer's specifications, or C, the specific aircraft maintenance or flight manual. All right, so how would you actually mark your instruments? Certainly it's going to matter what aircraft you're marking. Certain aircraft, the airspeed indicator for one would be marked at various speeds that are usually indicated in the type certificate data sheet. So under these options, it looks like it's going to be wow, these are not clear, is it? Well, it is not in accordance with the instrument, because one instrument can be installed in different aircraft. Both the aircraft and the engine manufacturer specifications, I guess that would be a good answer. Or C, the specific aircraft maintenance or flight manual. I would think that information is not in the maintenance. It may be, but it would be duplicate. I don't know. Sorry. I'm not. You can tell I haven't reviewed this. Is it B? It is C. The specific aircraft maintenance or flight manual. The markings to be used on an aircraft instrument are those specified by the aircraft manufacturer and listed in the maintenance or flight manual for the particular aircraft. All right, well, so you basically got to answer it the way they like. And if they didn't leave the option of looking up in the type certificate data sheet, I suppose I shouldn't have focused on that. But no, hopefully talking about it helped. Here's another question. Where may a person look for the information necessary to determine the required markings on an engine instrument? So basically the same type of question, but where would you look to see what markings are required? And they give 4 different options, and it looks like you can pick 2 of them. All right, so without looking at the options, where should you look for the information necessary? Well, I guess it's going to be in Okay, I guess I'm going to have to look at the probably 2 and 4, similar to the last question, flight manual and maintenance manual. So maybe A as opposed to the instrument. And the engine, it is an engine instrument, but okay. No. All right, I should have probably reviewed these before I started answering them live. It's not exactly how John King would do it. I guess I'm going with A. Oh, phew. Yes. In accordance with, there you go, the type certificate data sheet. The aircraft specifications are what they used to call it, and used to now is pretty much ancient history, because we're talking like a good 30, 35 years ago. It's all type certificate data sheets now. The information is also found in the aircraft maintenance manual or in the aircraft flight manual. Basically, the information is duplicated. I suppose you should see that each one says agrees with the other one. Here's a typical oral question. What references should be consulted to determine the proper range markings for aircraft instruments? So just from the discussion we had, what would we look for? Possibly the aircraft maintenance manual, maybe the aircraft specifications or the type certificate data sheet. And what was that other one they had? The flight manual, was it called? Or the like the owner's manual for aircraft instruments. Okay, let's see what the answer is. Aircraft maintenance manual, aircraft flight manual. All right, type certificate data sheet or aircraft specifications. Got them all. All right, now we'll talk a little bit about range marking colors. I guess I might pipe in here a little bit. The colors used as range markings are red, yellow, green, blue, or white. The markings can be in the form of an arc or a radial line. Think of the radial lines as lines going from the center of a wheel out in all directions, which is in effect the radius, like the spokes on a wheel. Red is used to indicate maximum and minimum ranges. Operations beyond these markings are dangerous and should be avoided. Okay, so it's following the same rules as the traffic lights so far in a normal automobile or other vehicle. Green indicates the normal operating range. Yellow is used to indicate caution. Blue and white are used on airspeed indicators to define specific conditions. So you can imagine they'll ask a few questions on each of these. And of course, red, green, and amber are going to be fairly instinctual to you just from your regular driving. The blue and white will be the ones that show whether or not you've looked at it a little closer. And you can see blue and white are used on airspeed indicators, so they don't indicate that they're used on a whole lot of other type of instruments. There's usually multiple markings, and here we could see a green arc, a yellow arc, a red radial line, a blue radial line, so that indicates we're talking about airspeed indicators. And sure enough, it's an airspeed indicator. which gives a reading in knots. There's a little legend that goes along with it. So if you wanted to know what each of the lines are, you can imagine green is the safe operating speed, the green arc, normal operating range. Airspeed indicator used by pilots in this white area is basically an indication of the safe area for operation with flaps. So if your flaps are extended or your flaps are down, you can actually reduce your airspeed without a fear of stall. Well, the dangerous stall goes down. And the other part of the white line indicates that you should be retracting your flaps once you approach. In this case, it looks like 82 knots. The blue radial line, that was to indicate operation under some sort of stress condition. Let's see what it says here. Blue radial line, best single engine rate of climb. So if one of the engines goes out, the pilot is going to be able to easily adjust down to the blue line. Yellow caution, red radial, never exceed 200. Red radio, yes, never exceed. Pilots will actually study the V's, the velocity, NE with a lower NE, or the velocity with the lower SO. Some of them you can kind of be able to tell. They don't necessarily, well, NE is never exceed speed, so that would be the high line. SO is the stalling speed, and that has to do with whether or not the flaps are up or down. And the S1 is basically the twin to that. The upper limit of the green arc is the maximum speed in rough air. All right, I think we covered that. CHT, or cylinder head temperature. Of course, this would be a reciprocating engine, and the temperature sensors are placed on the cylinder, and you're able to see how hot your engine is running, which definitely has a lot to do with your performance. You would like to keep the green arc normal, so you would, in this case, it's calibrated in degrees of Fahrenheit. It says CHT on the face, and it shows the F for Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit is, where water will freeze at 32 degrees and boil at 285. Is that the number? Sorry, don't quote me on that one. As opposed to centigrade, where the range for water to freeze and to boil is 0 to 100. All right, that's a little bit of a tangent. You can also see the other type of gauge. This is it has a needle that basically is calibrated, so they line up the markings with what the actual readings at the cylinder head, and you're able to get an accurate reading in the cockpit. MAP, that's manifold pressure. You can see it's also indicating on the face of the instrument. Pilot can determine immediately if the manifold pressure is in the correct range. Now, what manifold? Usually, with automobiles, you have your intake and your exhaust manifold. This is actually your intake manifold. Some MAP gauges show a yellow arc if intermittent high MAP is allowed, which apparently this one does show a yellow arc. So basically, it's a wide range, but when you get close to, in this case, 35 inches of mercury, that's what the pressure is measured in. Atmospheric is right about where the dial is now, 29.92. So if the pressure in the manifold gets to be too high, you have to adjust accordingly. Oil pressure also, in this case, it's pounds per square inch instead of inches of mercury. Basically, it's still a pressure indicating instrument. The oil pressure gauge measures the pressure in pounds per square inch of engine oil pressure. So basically, what was the prior one? You can see inches of Hg, which is the periodic sign for mercury. And PSI is pounds per square inch. So just basically be aware of it. Right now, the pounds per square inch is what? Atmospheric is, sorry, what is it, in the high teens? My bad. Oil pressure gauge measures the pressure in pounds per square inch of engine oil pressure. Again, we have the needle type, or this one here is actually combined the oil temperature and the oil pressure. They share one indicator. You can see the colors on the oil pressure. There's nothing too alarming there. Tachometer measures the revolution, usually of the crankshaft in the reciprocating engine. There's the equivalent in a turbine engine, but this one here is your typical tachometer that many of you even have in your automobile. Measures the revolutions per minute, and you can see you don't want to really rev up your aircraft engine beyond 2,500 RPMs, revolutions per minute, so it should only be turning 2,500 times every minute. It's also combined with a meter here. I'm not sure if that would be considered the Hobbs meter, whether that's measuring or is that measuring just the engine? Hopefully they don't ask me. I certainly would know where to look for the information. This is a true-false question. Excuse me, I had to take a little bit of a drink of my tea. You've probably already read it. This obviously looks true. Aircraft instruments are color-coded to direct attention to operational ranges and limitations. Yes. The other part of the true-false, aircraft instrument range markings are not specified by Title 14 of the CFRs, but are standardized by aircraft manufacturers. Title 14, that's our FARs. And, they certainly go into all sorts of detail. So I would be surprised if they don't talk about instruments in some detail. Of course, the specific numbers are going to have to be referenced to the specific aircraft, but the the standardization of instruments, I'm sure, is covered by Title 14. I should probably call it up on the screen so we can actually look at it, but let's presume that this statement is false because it's saying not, and I'm saying they probably are specified. Yes, it is false. They are specified in the type certificate data sheet, the details, which are according to the Code of Federal Regulations 2141, a part of the type certificate. Well, yeah, probably should have called up the FAR here so you can actually see it. It doesn't look like it would be that interesting. Could put you on pause, but I'm going to omit that for the moment. Moving on, the next question. Which of the following instruments will normally have range markings? So they're giving us three options. It looks like a couple of them have, one has one altimeter, which the altimeter is also in number C. Airspeed indicator is in B and C. And the CHT, cylinder head temperature, well, we certainly know that the cylinder head temperature one has range markings. Altimeter, we didn't look at that. Let's think about that. Airspeed indicator definitely has the range markings. It had quite a few range markings. So far B is correct, but this altimeter is in the other answer. So right there, I'd probably say B is the correct answer. Altimeter measures how far you are off the ground, and there's, since it kind of spins around the needle or the barrel gauge, it doesn't really have a red line. I suppose red line would be 0 if it's if it's a radio or radar altimeter measuring from the ground. So altimeter does not have range markings, so B is the correct answer. The green arc on an aircraft temperature gauge indicates, what would that green arc just at a glance indicate? A, B, or C? A, the instrument is not calibrated. B, the desirable temperature range. Well, green sounds desirable. C, a low unsafe temperature range. No, that sounds like that'd be a red or yellow. So the green arc is B. It indicates the desirable temperature range of operation. Next question. The red radial lines on the face of an engine oil pressure gauge indicates A, minimum engine safe RPM operating range, B, minimum precautionary safe operating range, or C, minimum and or maximum safe operating limits. All right, let me go back to it. It's the red radial line. So what is that without even looking at the options? That's basically the never exceed speed. That's the part where you do not want to run your RPMs over a higher level or run your engine so hot or your manifold pressure so high. So this one's an engine oil pressure gauge. So the red radial line would be the maximum pressure, wouldn't it? There's minimum and or maximum safe operating limits. I see the red radial lines. There's two of them, so you don't want to go below this pressure. You don't want to go over this other pressure. So there's probably two red radial lines. So I guess that would be C. I guess mostly because it says minimum and or maximum. Yes. Okay, we're doing pretty good here. I missed the first one though. I guess it gives me some place to review. Typical oral question. What is the meaning of a yellow arc on an aircraft instrument? Okay, the yellow arc, that's caution. So that's probably the limited, probably operating range. You can go into that range, but not for very long. Probably not the most articulate answer. A caution or limited flight operations range. Not much better. Fumble over your words if you have to get them all out. How would an airspeed indicator be marked to show the best rate of climb speed with one engine inoperative? Well, there we go. There's that question. If we were paying attention during the airspeed indicator, we did happen to see that blue radial line. And what was that? That just happened to be the best rate of climb speed with one engine inoperative. So by reviewing that, we lucked out and know this one's number B, or letter B. Of course, that's got to be a multi-engine aircraft, because if it's a single engine aircraft to begin with one engine inoperative, you're not going to have a very, very high rate of climb speed. Okay. I guess I'm not on screen, am I? No, I don't think I am. Oh, there I am. All right. Cracked myself up. Applying range markings. Okay, it looks like basically they picked up some manufactured range markings that you could just kind of cut like a little project. Perhaps some of these came with the instrument, because you would want the size to kind of line up. I imagine they build them, they make them in all various sizes. I don't know if these are actually being used, but probably. Occasionally, all right. Occasionally, the aircraft technician may find it necessary to apply these markings to an approved replacement instrument on which they do not appear. It is crucial, usually, these days it depends on what area you're in, but that might be more of an avionics technician. It is crucial that the instrument be marked correctly and only in accordance with approved data. Yes, be very cautious if you're going to apply these range markings yourself. Yeah, I would probably read that one twice. Yeah, it's crucial. Extremely crucial, guys and gals. The markings may be placed on the cover glass of the instrument with paint or decals. But if you are going to put it on the glass, it depends on, some of these glasses may slip, so a white slippage mark is made to extend from the glass to the instrument case. And then if the glass itself does rotate in the bezel, the marking will no longer be lined up correctly, because you put it on the glass and the needle underneath it is moving independent of the glass. So you use a white slippage mark. If a broken slippage mark indicates to the pilot or indicates the pilot or technician that is doing a quick inspection. Question that may come up: what marking color is used to indicate if a cover glass has slipped. Is it red, white, yellow? And you may find some of the tests that are uploaded. We may actually add an additional option, so maybe green or black. And in our case, we remember just looked at it. It's white, B. That's the slippage mark. That's of course, if they're not used if the instrument has the range markings like right on its face, as opposed to rather than on the glass or on the face of the dial, where the numbers are, etc. All right. An oral question is very similar. They want you to know about this slippage mark. What is the purpose of the slippage mark on an instrument glass? So what's that little white line? Well, it's a white line. You may start by saying that. And it's to indicate whether or not the instrument that was marked on the glass, possibly the glass could rotate in the bezel, and the calibration would not read correctly. To indicate if the glass has moved, which could cause incorrect range markings on an instrument that has the range markings painted on the glass. I think we got all the right words in, not necessarily in the same order. And often, once you indicate a correct answer, they're not going to really make you go through the entire recitation. You can indicate pretty quickly you know what it is. When installing an instrument in an aircraft, who is responsible for making sure it is properly marked? You're putting the instrument in. Who's gonna look to make sure that the colors line up with what's actually allowed for this aircraft? Well, if you're going to be installing it, I would say, don't try to blame somebody in the office. They're going to blame you. So the owner, technically, who is ultimately responsible, I would say probably the A, if we were actually putting together a cause of action. The instrument installer, well, that's you. That's the person who put it in there, or the manufacturer who just mailed it to you in a box. No, the buck is going to stop right squarely in your lap, the aircraft installer. So make sure it's properly marked when installing an instrument, which is sometimes why you would defer to someone with a little more avionics experience. Aircraft instruments. Basically is the introduction to avionics. Well, actually, communication and navigation is, but the two of them together is the backbone to the avionics program. All right, so the correct answer is you, the instrument installer. The technician making the installation has a responsibility to make sure the instrument is properly marked for the aircraft in which it's being installed. And so, basically got to pay attention. It's particularly with instruments. You also want to make sure that they're operating correctly once they're installed. Typical oral question: who is authorized to apply the range markings to an instrument dial face? Okay, the dial face, that's not necessarily the glass. That means you got to actually take it apart and put markings on the dial face. I think that sounds like a trick question, and I would say an authorized repair facility that has a rating for that particular instrument, or the instrument manufacturer themselves. I don't know if there'd be a third option. Yeah, the manufacturer or a certificated instrument repair station. Yeah, you can't take the instrument apart. Excuse me. That's it. Okay. Way to end. Oops. All right. Appreciate you joining me for that one. We'll go ahead and wrap it up, and I'll see you on the next one. All right. Thanks a bunch. Goodbye.